Hello, my name's Joanna Harries and I'm a singer and one of the co-founders of SongPath. And today I'm going to be taking you behind the scenes of a new podcast that I've been developing over the last year called Songs of the River. Now, at SongPath, our mission is to help people connect creatively with the natural world around them for better mental health and well-being. We already run uniquely curated outdoor musical events across the UK, and this new podcast is going to help take our work into the digital sphere and help us connect with even more people. So, Songs of the River will take listeners on an audio journey along some of the UK's unique and wonderful rivers, using folksong to help us explore the landscapes, histories and stories that surround these rivers. Now, rivers are amazing natural pathways, so that's why I've chosen them as the focus for this project. They have huge geographical, historical and cultural significance, so there's a wealth of fascinating material for us to delve into here. The first 2 seasons of the podcast are going to explore 2 important but very different rivers at opposite ends of the UK. The River Thames in London and the River Clyde in Glasgow and Lanarkshire. This bridge is one of over 200 bridges across the River Thames, but back when Hampton Court Palace was built, the only way to cross the river was the Hampton Ferry, which has been operating for over 400 years, since 1514. The River Thames was an important means of travel for the royal family, and Hampton Court was chosen for its location, easily accessible from London city centre by barge. It quickly became King Henry VIII's favourite residence. It was here that his third wife, Queen Jane Seymour, gave birth to their son, the future Edward VI, before tragically dying 12 days later. The tale of her death became a popular topic for songs of the time. There are at least 20 different versions of the folk song The Death of Queen Jane, sometimes called King Henry, or even sometimes Queen Jeanie. Most of them tell the story of a difficult labour. Sometimes it's lasted 6 days, sometimes 9, sometimes even 6 weeks. And she calls on her womenfolk and finally on King Henry to help her.
Queen Jane lay in labour for 9 days or more, till the women were so tired they could stay no longer there. Till the women were so tired they could stay no longer there. Good women, good women, good women as ye be, to open my right side and find my baby. To open my right side and find my baby.
The whole idea behind this is to help people feel really connected to the landscape. So hopefully you'll hear that I've been recording a lot of wild audio, as I've been calling it. So you can really hear my footsteps, you can hear the water tinkling away, the different qualities of the river in different places, the bird song, the surroundings, that should be really present for the listener in the audio. Then, of course, there's also the musical aspect where I've been recording myself singing some of these beautiful, fascinating, varied folk songs that I've been delving into. And these are the 2 main audio strands. Each of these episodes is designed to be experienced either as a virtual journey so that people can listen to it at home. That's especially important for people who might not be able to get outside as much. They can still feel connected to the landscape. Or people can listen to it while actually walking along the rivers themselves. There's a map which shows you where to listen to each episode, or where I recorded each episode. So I'm hoping that this will inspire people to quite literally follow in my footsteps and explore these waterways themselves. For me, this is a project that grew out of the COVID-19 pandemic and the importance for me of my daily exercise, that time spent being able to get outside. And I was walking along the River Thames near where I live quite a lot of that time. although it came out of this very specific time period, I've designed this so that it isn't time specific. It can be listened to at any time. It won't go out of date. Thankfully, rivers have a very long lifespan. So it will hopefully form a lasting musical resource. And of course, I'm also planning to add some more series exploring new rivers over the years. We've now moved along the river to Glasgow Green, and here you'll find the Calton Weavers' Gate, a monument to those who died in the famous Weavers' Strike in September 1787. At the time, Calton was a community of hand weavers based just outside of Glasgow. Now, of course, it's very much part of Glasgow's East End. But the most famous song about the Calton weavers doesn't celebrate their work, but a very different aspect of Glasgow's history. A young Calton weaver goes to seek his fortune in Glasgow City, but is taken in by Nancy Whiskey and the many ale houses, dram shops and public houses across the city. Whiskey was increasingly the drink of choice for Glaswegians by the 18th century, and they drank a lot of it. A report from around the same time as the Weavers' Strike found that in the area of Govan, just across the river, they drank over 6,000 gallons of whiskey a year. Many of the illegal drinking dens, known as shebeens, were run by women, so it's perhaps not surprising that the whiskey in the song is personified as the intoxicating Nancy Whiskey.
I'm a weaver, Calton weaver, I'm a rash and roving trade. I've got siller in my pooches, I can follow the roving trade. Oh, whiskey, whiskey, Nancy whiskey, 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 Nancy, oh. As I came into Glasgow City, Nancy Whiskey a chance to smell. I gaed in, sat down beside her, 7 long years I loved her well. Whiskey, whiskey, Nancy Whiskey, 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 Nancy, oh. The mare I kissed her, the mare I looed her, the mare I kissed her, the mare she smiled, and I forgot my mother's teaching. Nancy soon had me beguiled. Oh, whiskey, whiskey, Nancy, whiskey, 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 Nancy, oh.
Now, a new project like this required me to learn some new skills and acquire some new equipment, and I'm really grateful for the support of a Royal Philharmonic Society Enterprise Award in association with Harriet's Trust, and also additional support from the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland's Make It Happen Fund. These have allowed me to buy equipment, to get the right training, and to collaborate with some brilliant people to create all of the things that are necessary for a podcast. Things like the brilliant theme music that composer Peter Facer has written specially for this, which you heard at the beginning. This has been a new venture for me as a musician, making this podcast. So I thought I'd share some tips with you about what I've learnt from the process of creating my first podcast over the last year. Firstly, you'll need the right equipment. Here's some of mine. There's my microphone, and if you're recording outside, you'll also definitely need a windshield. That's the fluffy grey thing. I also really recommend getting a steady, shock-absorbing mount. Next, if you're new to podcasting, you might consider getting some training. For instance, I did the City Lit podcasting course. I did it online during the pandemic. They have a beginner's and an advanced one, which will take you from your initial idea through to releasing your podcast to the world. Once you have your idea, you can do your research. Here are just a few of my favourite books that I delved into for Songs of the River. I also found brilliant resources online. For instance, the English Folk Dance and Song Society Library Archive is all online. And JSTOR has lots of academic research papers on things like Scottish alehouses in the 18th century. Next, you want to capture your footage. This was the really fun part. And for me, it meant I got to spend some glorious days walking along the Thames path and by Scottish waterfalls. I'd say make sure you know what you want to capture before you go, and also be prepared to alter your plans if the weather turns. For the music, I recorded this all separately and layered it with the background sound recordings that I'd taken by the river, just to give me more control over it all. For this, you'll need to edit it together, and you can do this in a free program like Audacity. Make sure you check your work with good headphones and don't just rely on computer speakers. Finally, you can get your podcast out there and start shouting about it. You'll need a podcast hosting service, something like Buzzsprout, to host and distribute your podcast to the different channels where people listen, like Apple Music, Stitcher, etc. Good luck! So thank you for joining me behind the scenes of Songs of the River. I hope you'll tune in and listen to some of the episodes. You can also find out about some of SongPath's upcoming live events on the SongPath website, songpath.co.uk.